All right, so thank you so much everyone for joining us today. I'm excited to have Rebecca Rutstein here. Rebecca and I have been working together for the past 3 months as she's been the Science Center's bioartist in residence, where she's been collaborating remotely and in person with the scientists of U City Square-based biotech company Integral Molecular. So Rebecca works in painting, sculpture, interactive installation, and public art, and her work focuses on the intersection of art, science, and technology. Rebecca has participated in many residencies across the globe on land and at sea, including collaborating with scientists on research vessels. Rebecca has received the prestigious Pew Fellowship in the Arts, an Independence Foundation Fellowship, a Pennsylvania Council of the Arts grant, and was named MIT Ocean Discovery Fellow. She's had over 25 solo exhibitions, exhibited widely in museums, institutions, and galleries, and completed several public art projects. So that was a very abbreviated version of her bio. Rebecca has a lot more accomplishments in addition to what I've mentioned. So I'm looking forward to her sharing some of them with us today, and I will now hand things over to Rebecca.
Thanks, Angela. You make me sound so good. Thank you. I'm gonna share my screen now.
It's complicated. You have to fill.
Oh yeah. Okay. Hold on one second. Give me 1 minute. All right. Are you guys? Can you see my screen? All right. Awesome. Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you so much, Angela, and thanks for having me. As Angela said, my name is Rebecca Rutstein, and I am a multidisciplinary artist, often working at the intersection of art, science, and technology. My practice has evolved over the years and it's expanded to include painting, sculpture, interactive installation, and public art, as Angela mentioned. And in the pandemic, I've actually been experimenting with other media, including sound and a little bit of video. For the past 20 years, I've been creating work inspired by geology, microbiology, marine science, and the natural world. And over the last 6 years, I've been collaborating with scientists on land and also at sea on research vessels, exploring the deep sea. And it's been these experiences that's really had a profound impact on my work and really changed the trajectory of my life, to be honest. So I feel really passionate about creating visual and immersive experiences like the one you see here that shed light on places and processes that are hidden from view and that can connect people with the natural world, especially in the face of our climate crisis. So I'd like to share a little bit about how I got to be doing what I'm doing now and some recent projects, as well as some things in the works. So I always like to start with this image of Ithaca, New York, where I fell in love with not only painting, but geology. I was an undergrad student there, and I took a class at Cornell for geology. It was an intro class for non-science majors, informally called Rocks for Jocks. And I love this class. It was very life-changing because we would go to these state parks and see these geology firsthand in terms of looking at like exposed layers of shale like you see here, or these deep glacial lakes that were carved out by the last ice age. And so it was a very kind of visceral, visual way of learning about geology, and it really had an impact on me. I didn't think to incorporate geology into my work for many years, but this was where the seed was planted. So over time, I started thinking about plate tectonics and geology as a metaphor, thinking about sort of the forces beneath the surface causing upheaval above the surface, and thinking about that in my own life in my 20s as a metaphor for kind of interpersonal relationships and just experiences I was having. And so I started incorporating geologic themes into my paintings, and then really in earnest started wanting to visit and explore and learn about geology of different regions. And so I was in Western Canada and Banff, Canada, looking at the Canadian Rockies. And then I found myself in Hawaii in 2005, studying the Kilauea volcano. And I was really interested in exploring it fully, like through caving through lava tubes and helicopter rides over the crater, and really trying to immerse myself in understanding the geology there. And I was creating these sort of narrative, almost whimsical paintings that were, in response to my experience there. But while I was there, and this exhibition was called Ebb and Flow, which again sort of touches on sort of the geology, but also maybe emotional states of mind. So it was while I was in Hawaii in 2005 that I came across this sonar map of the ocean floor. And sonar technology is basically using sound waves to image the ocean floor. And I became really fascinated by what was beneath the surface. It started to become almost more important to me than the islands above. And so I became fascinated by this hidden landscape and wanted to explore it. Naively, as a young artist, I thought, why don't I call Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution and see if I can get down in the submersible, and they sort of hung up on me when I called because it wasn't really accessible to the public. So I sort of tabled that dream and kind of continued just sort of exploring these themes, kind of moving inward in terms of like my own imagined ideas of the deep sea. And so I was making paintings like this, and these really kind of touch on sort of what I think about when I'm painting, juxtapositions of graphic and atmospheric passages, thinking about positive and negative space, thinking about linear and volumetric forms, and thinking about micro and macro. And so that those kinds of themes are really they tie all my work together over the years and represent those paintings as well. But around this time in 2006, I came upon this article about Marie Tharp, and this sort of solidified my love of the deep sea and of the ocean floor, because she was a cartographer and oceanographer who worked for decades mapping the ocean floor, with actually working with echo soundings from the Navy. She would actually draw out these two-dimensional profiles using these single points, these echo soundings. So you can see in the lower right, she has this sort of two-dimensional profile of what the ocean floor looked like. And she would have hundreds of miles in between her data, and she would interpolate all the spaces in between and create these detailed drawings of the ocean floor with elevation numbers inside each seamount. And they were really fascinating drawings, and she sort of single-handedly discovered this rift in the Atlantic Ocean, in the Mid-Atlantic Ocean, which is actually evidence of plate tectonics, is where two plates are separating. And she discovered this through her meticulous drawings, and I was really fascinated with her. And I ended up doing an homage to her at the Philadelphia airport in 2008. This was called Abyss, and it was a 60-foot long installation of paintings, just sort of, again, imagining this deep sea space. I continued sort of thinking about the deep sea, and as I was painting, my paintings started to pare down in terms of imagery. I started realizing that when I had certain images in the paintings, you would have a frame of reference, and it would stop you from really getting lost in the painting. And I wanted that feeling of getting lost in the painting. And so I started paring down to just the sort of the topographic maps, these sort of like, tetrahedral or wireframe grids. And I loved the way I started to get lost in the work, where I would be looking at it, not sure if I'm looking at like satellite images of a continental edge, or looking through a microscope at something microscopic. And so I really love that push and pull in the work. And it's something that I really sort of try to create when I'm making paintings. In 2012, I found myself in Iceland to continue this sort of exploration of geologically rich places. And Iceland is at the top of the list, really, with glaciers and volcanoes. It actually sits on the Mid-Atlantic Ridge where Marie Tharp discovered this rift. So it's sort of full circle to go there. And I was loving like exploring the glaciers there, and came back to Philadelphia and created this painting that was a large painting called Deep Rift. And it was sort of kind of trying to simulate these sort of undulating forms and crevasses of the glaciers. But as I made this painting, I really kind of wanted to break the boundaries of the canvas. This had happened in the past with some elements where I would paint onto the wall or silkscreen onto the wall, but I really felt this urge to kind of create physical undulation. And so I created this piece to the right of the painting, which is actually taking forms from the painting, my own hand-drawn forms, my painted forms, and laser cutting them out of steel through a digital process. And so I really loved, I was excited to sort of break out of the boundary of the canvas. And this piece on the right called Fissure is very much, again, talking about juxtapositions. It almost looks like lacy paper, but it's actually laser cut steel that's bent. And so it has a sort of delicate, lacy feeling, but it's also very solid and structurally sound. And it furthermore kind of looks like it might have been developed through like a 3D modeling program, like a rendering, but it's actually all hand-drawn. So that was an exciting kind of development in making work and realizing that I don't have to just be a painter. And I had an opportunity to do a commission for a piece that would stand up, a sculpture that would actually come up from the ground. And so I created this piece, and I got really interested in working with the metal. And as soon as it stood up, it had so much presence for me. And I immediately kind of envisioned a room full of these. It kind of reminded me of when you're flying in an airplane over a blanket of clouds. And so I wanted to create like a room of clouds. And so, just this one act of sort of like standing the sculpture up ended up, opening up a whole body of work that I created at Bridge-O-Mare Gallery at 2015. The last image was also from Bridge-O-Mare Gallery, I should mention, in 2013. But so I ended up like following through with this idea of creating a room full of these cloud, what I consider to be cloud forms. And just for scale, I'm going to show you, these are my boys inside the sculptures. But the sculptures are about 5 by 10 feet. There's 8 of them. And I was excited about sort of creating an environment that you could move through, and that was almost like a deconstructed painting. But I like the idea of creating an environment. These are some of the paintings that were part of that show. And again, thinking about cloud formations and sky tone variations, blue hour, cumulonimbus clouds, thinking about, again, like this sort of graphic and atmospheric kind of passages within, sharing space within a painting. Another something that I've done in some work that will show up later is this idea of kind of juxtaposing two planes together and looking at micro and macro scales simultaneously. So in 2015, right around the time of the show, I was awarded my first public art project. And it was exciting to sort of break out of a gallery space and work with a team of people to create something on this scale. It was 40 by 70 feet. And I was working with LED lights that would change color throughout the course of the evening. So if you look here, you can see on the right, there are sort of twinkling stars that was part of the LED program. And I had worked with students at Temple where this piece is situated, and they were telling me that they really wanted to see stars, that there was so much light pollution that they couldn't see stars. So I really wanted to create stars in this piece. And so here's a little time lapse of sort of going from kind of dusk into the night. But this piece was really expansive for me in terms of creating a dynamic kind of viewing experience and really reaching a broader audience, which was the first time I was doing something like this. So I really learned a lot from this and really appreciated the idea of kind of collaborating with others. And so in in the spirit of collaboration, right in the middle of working on that public art project, I was invited out to sea for the first time in 2015. And I was really thrilled at the opportunity. Wasn't quite sure what was going to happen. I wasn't going to be going down in a submersible. I was just going to be going out on the ship and sailing with a group of scientists. But I seized the opportunity, and it ended up being just like a life-changing experience. We were sailing from the Galapagos Islands to California, and the scientists were mapping the ocean floor, which is why they thought I would be perfect for the trip, because I was interested in all of this. And so we were actually working with multi-beam sonar technology attached to the hull of the ship that basically uses echo soundings, like I was talking about earlier, but 340 at once. So it's a multi-beam versus a single echo sounding. And so each sound wave records a depth. And so you're able to sort of create a swath of data that comes up on your screen. And then we would take that data, I'll get back to that in a second, but we would take that data and bring it into a 4D modeling program. And I could then kind of move through this underwater landscape. So I would convert the data into this sort of wireframe and then almost swim at the bottom of the ocean at this, this hidden landscape, which is actually, this is called the Galapagos Rift Zone. It's underneath the Galapagos Islands. And so while I was on the ship, we were getting all of this data, and I was taking interesting vantage points from these fly-throughs and then making paintings about them. I just wanted to add that we were also trailing a hurricane in the Pacific Ocean. And so I was in this really tight quarters in the wet lab of the ship, and I was trying to make my little paintings, and things got really kind of rocky, and I decided to sort of roll with the motion, so to speak, and actually started pouring the paint and letting kind of the motion of the ship dictate the dispersion of the paint. And so it ended up being kind of a neat record of the ship's motion. And so I ended up making paintings, large paintings that were kind of a combination of these pores and working with that mapping data. And so these were kind of, I was excited about kind of being able to share this kind of hidden landscape with people that were to view these pieces. And so it was kind of an exciting opportunity to work with this data that was literally coming up on the screen in real time. I fell in love with being out at sea. It was like a total, surprisingly life-changing experience for me that I wasn't quite expecting. And my husband jokes with me that he never saw it coming when we got married, that I'd become a sailor, but I did. I fell in love with it. And so I just kept wanting to have other opportunities to do it. And I was being invited by other organizations. So I was very fortunate to be invited in 2016 on the Falkor research vessel, first off the coast of Tahiti and then sailing from Vietnam to Guam. And that was a really interesting trip. We were looking at, so the black area is Vietnam and the white is, the linear form is the Mekong River. And so we were looking at the Mekong River as it flows into the South China Sea. And this is satellite data that's showing the chlorophyll concentration. So you're basically looking at like a freshwater input into saltwater. And so we were looking at this data, and I set up a studio in the wet lab of the ship, and I was making paintings, sort of working with these maps. And these are some of the paintings I was creating, as well as working with more multi-beam sonar mapping data as we sailed from all the way to Guam. So while I was having these experiences and meeting more people, my network of collaborators was starting to expand. And I was invited into a group called the Ocean Memory Project, which has been a really fascinating group that has really kind of expanded just the way I think about the world. It's a transdisciplinary group of artists and scientists that are exploring the intersection of the ocean and memory, and thinking about how the ocean holds memories through its living and non-living systems. For example, complex microbial networks that use memory recall to have to undergo their processes and to actually mediate processes within the ocean and on our planet. And so, the ocean has been like a resilient and stabilizing feature of our planet. However, it's also a fragile system, as we're seeing. And but we, as this collective, we've been exploring how we can learn from the adaptations in the ocean, and particularly in microbial networks, and how we can learn from that so that we can survive in the Anthropocene as things are shifting and changing. And so it's a really fascinating project that I've been involved with for a while, and it's continuing in multiple ways, but it did culminate in 2019 with an expedition at sea in the Salish Sea off the coast of Vancouver and Washington. And we were there together, some of us, looking at, again, saltwater and freshwater inputs in the ocean, and doing hydrophone recordings and collecting water samples. And I, of course, was painting, because that's what I like to do when I'm on a ship. So I wanted to now back up a little bit to 2018, where I went on 2 expeditions at sea, and this was where my dream of going down in Alvin came to fruition. I was humbled to be invited by 2 different scientists to go on 2 different expeditions back to back. And so the first one was in 2018 in the fall to Costa Rica, where we were looking at, you can see here these seamounts on the Pacific plate, and they're being subducted. They're kind of going into and underneath the Costa Rican plate. And so these seamounts are subducting, and they're causing scarring on the coast. You can see it, and they're pressing up, and there's methane and organic compounds within these seamounts, and that's being pushed out. So it creates life there, because the organisms at the bottom of the ocean feed off of methane. And so it creates these little ecosystems. And the other trip that I went on was with Mandy Joy at the University of Georgia. And this was in Guaymas Basin, which is here in the Sea of Cortez, or the Gulf of California. It's a really fascinating place to learn about life, like origins of life, really, because you see the red kind of jagged line is actually a spreading center. It's where 2 plates are separating. And so you have magma coming up from within the earth, and you have hydrothermal vents, but then you see these 2 land masses, Baja California and the Mexican coast, are really close together. And so they're actually dropping sediment down on top of these hydrothermal vents. And so it's creating all this heat and pressure that's actually causing oil to form very, very quickly. And so it's a really fascinating place to learn about chemosynthetic ecosystems, like organisms that survive on chemicals, and how to like understand these sort of ancient processes that are happening in a nascent sea. And so we were there together, and we were on the ship side by side, working in the science lab. It is a very busy place. There's lots of people coming and going. Everybody's like a team. And this is what I love about working with scientists. And I experienced the same thing with my residency at Integral, is that, artists and scientists are actually much more similar and alike than different. And I think this is a discrepancy that people don't realize. But, scientists and artists are both sort of like trying to understand the world, trying to understand the way things work. Like we're observers, and we are curious about the world. And so I loved working with these scientists. There was just a great energy, and there was just always something happening, and we were very much integrated. I was working right with them, and they were constantly like coming and looking at my work and talking to me about it. And I was also part of some of their operations, like on the right here, taking CTD samples, which are like flasks of water that you collect at different depths. And so there was a synergy, and we were feeding off of each other. And that's what I really love about being at sea, or just, being immersed with scientists. A little bit about the dives. This is the Alvin submersible being recovered by divers and then tethered to the ship to be towed in. And you can see the orange portion, that's actually what gets filled with water to make it sink. This is it being recovered onto the deck. And these are the samples you can see. This is after a dive. You can see these cores that are collected from the ocean, and you can see the titanium sphere, which is where it's a 6-foot sphere, and the portholes where 2 passengers and the pilot reside. It's very tight quarters. If you're claustrophobic, I don't recommend you trying it, but it's really a momentous thing when you're about to get into and climb into the hatch and get into this thing. And so you feel like you're an astronaut exploring space, and they actually call you an aquanaut, which I kind of love that term. But anyway, there's always like an entourage of people on deck cheering you on as you get in. And it's very momentous. You're down for 9 hours. And this is us being lowered. And this is inside the vessel. You can see the hatch above. That's where you climb through. This makes it look bigger than it is. It's actually quite tight in there. You're kind of climbing on top of each other to get in. On the left is Eric Cortez, who is from Temple University, who I dove with on the first dive. And on the right is Mandy Choi from the University of Georgia, who I did the second dive with, 2 different trips. I think for me, one of the most spiritual and kind of metaphysical experiences of my life was going down in the submersible and descending the water column for an hour and a half slowly, and just seeing bioluminescent life out the porthole. It was truly magnificent. And it was like nothing I've ever experienced before. I wanted to share this with people in some way. And so I'll show you the installation that I created in response to that. But this is from the Costa Rica dive, some tube worms that we saw. And then these are all from the Guaymas Basin dive off the coast of Mexico. These are hydrothermal vents with these Riftia tube worms. They have these giant red plumes. And then you can see the yellow are these, and the orange are these bacterial mats. These are this bacteria that sits on top of the sediment that I was talking about. And they feed off of chemicals. And so you can see some sort of zoomed in views of how they create these kind of open structures and allow oxygen to flow, and they allow other organisms and microorganisms to kind of habitate. This is us taking core samples and then bringing it back up on deck. And if you look, you can see they kind of organize into filaments. And so I was looking at that under the microscope, and then making paintings on the ship, sort of thinking about these ideas. And so one other way that we were getting data was through this AUV, which is an autonomous underwater vehicle, which actually takes photomosaics of the ocean floor. And so you can see like larger areas of these bacterial mats that form different colors based on, I think, temperature and I guess chemical concentration. But it was really fascinating and eye-opening. Back on shore, Mandy, who I mentioned is from the University of Georgia, her university was really interested in our collaboration, this sort of cross-disciplinary collaboration. And so they invited me to have an exhibition at the Georgia Museum of Art and to be a visiting chair to the university and give talks with Mandy and appear at, they had a huge event called Art Sustainability in the Environment, which was a gathering for 50 research universities. And so we spoke about our experiences and stuff. But this was an installation I did of paintings. This is a 22-foot tall painting where looking at, you can see, and this is just for scale, you can see me standing, if you can see. I don't know, I'm hidden by by the viewers here, but basically I was looking at these bacterial mats that I was talking about and the open structures of them, and then also the way they form into filaments. And so I wanted to create this sort of micro world on a macro scale. And so juxtaposing the painting installation, I created Shimmer. And Shimmer is an installation that works with laser cut steel as well as an LED lighting program. And basically I worked with video footage of a particular organism that creates bioluminescence. It's called a siphonophore, and it creates these trails of light that I saw when I was in the submersible. And so I actually worked with a program where I programmed the lights on the back of the sculptures to mimic what the siphonophore does. And so what happens is that when you walk by this piece, there are motion sensors that detect your motion, and then it recreates this experience. And so I can show you a little video. And so I should mention also that the piece itself is, the forms are hydrocarbon structures, which are sort of how they're inspired by hydrocarbon structures, which make up the oil that is forming in this area. So this piece is really meant to be, it's meant to be an aesthetic experience, and but it's also meant to maybe teach the public something about the deep ocean and about something maybe they didn't know. And so it was really happy with the outcome of this piece. It had a really positive impact in the Georgia community, and the museum ended up permanently acquiring the piece. And so I'm happy because I'm interested in sort of my work resonating beyond aesthetics and actually maybe leaving the viewer with, you know, a deeper connection with the ocean or with the natural world. And so that was something that I'm really looking to explore in my future work. During these other projects, I'm also doing a lot of just painting in the studio and sort of exploring these themes of networks, microbial networks, topography, also thinking about bioluminescence. So these are themes that I'm continuing to explore in my painting practice. I also, one of the other things that was discovered in Guaymas Basin is something called methane hydrate, which is actually methane gas trapped in ice crystals. It's an extreme environment with hot and cold. And so these paintings are sort of inspired by those forms. And so these are all paintings that I've been doing over the last few years, kind of thinking about these themes. Then moving on to some other public projects. I did this mural project with Kinwood Elementary School, which is dear to me because I actually am an alum of Kinwood Elementary, and my children also went there. And my younger son was there when we did this mural, and it actually engaged, like a lot of the kids were involved in the painting of the mural. And again, it's tying into the themes of the shimmer installation with these sort of hydrocarbon structures. So I was really happy to be able to do something that was part of the community, and it's going to be a permanent part of the school. A larger mural that I recently completed is the Convergence Mural on the AT&T Building in Philadelphia on the Schuylkill River. And this was meant to be a reflection of the Schuylkill River and surrounding environment. And so when I was selected as a finalist, I wanted to see what it was like to be at the building. And so I got up onto the rooftop and looked out and saw just all of these intersecting lines in the environment, you know, of transport. And so we had like bridges and railroads and highways and so forth. And so I wanted to create that energy, recreate that energy, and sort of tie in all of those lines into the mural. The other thing that I wanted to do with this mural was to tie into the cultural relevance of the Schuylkill River at the South Street Bridge, where this is located. And so my first thought was the Adunde Festival, which is a festival of African heritage that takes place every June on South Street. And they start the festival off with a ceremony on the South Street Bridge, right by the AT&T Building. You can see it in the background. This predates the mural, of course. And they throw fruit and flowers into the river as an offering. And so I wanted to kind of capture the colors of the fruit and the flowers and their colorful clothing that they wear for this festival to celebrate and to celebrate this part of Philadelphia. And so this is how the mural came to be. And these are some images of it in progress. I worked with a team with Mural Arts Program led by Nathaniel Lee, who is phenomenal. And it was complicated getting something that was designed on a small scale to be 63 by 124 feet. I have a little time lapse of the first wall being done. You can see at the base that there isn't level ground for scaffolding or a lift. So we had to actually work with swing stage scaffolding from the rooftop. And so you can see the swing stage is sort of attached to these posts that were laid by cranes. And so it was a challenge to get through that, but we, you know, they figured out the engineering of it, and it was just really exciting to see the mural unfold on this scale. And so I'm going to show a little bit more images and some drone footage as well, but You can see here how it really, the right side with the intersecting lines really mimics a lot of the kind of architectural features of the area. And so it's been exciting to see this piece kind of be kind of almost part of the Philadelphia landscape in certain views. And so it's been really humbling for me to sort of have this mural be part of Philadelphia. And for me, I was excited to sort of humanize the built environment of this building and sort of, you know, to create something that would be dynamic and kind of uplifting for people passing by it. You know, people are passing by it close by, they're passing by it from further away on the expressway. And so it needed to really function on close scale and far away. Here's a little bit of drone footage while it was being actually created. But yeah, this was a challenge in a lot of ways, but also, like, again, a great opportunity to create something permanent and hopefully an improvement to what was there before. I'm going to move on because I'm afraid I'm going to run out of time, Angela. But so here's actually switching gears. It's another public art project that I recently completed, and this is a rendering for a sculpture called Ridge and Valley. It's at the Bower Sculpture Park, which is opening on May 1st, by the way. So I'm going to plug the Garden Bower, gardenbower.com. You should go. They have an incredible woodlands and trails and sculptures that are open to the public, and it's free. And they've created a beautiful sanctuary there. So the gardenbower.com. But I'm going to show a little bit of a video of, this is the piece actually being installed. This is a 9 by 67 foot Corten steel sculpture that is actually inspired by ecoregion maps of the area. This is located in central Pennsylvania, and so right in the middle of the Appalachian Mountains. And so this piece is inspired by these ecoregion maps, and in particular, a distinct feature of bends and folds called the Pennsylvania salient. And you can really see it when this second plate lifts up. But this was an engineering challenge to install. It's 17 tons. We created a system of tongue and grooves so that you can see it here as it connects together. But it actually, it's not welded or anything because we wanted to take into account thermal expansion and contraction because it's outside. But this was an exciting piece for several reasons. You know, I had created public work, but not in a rural setting. And so I was really hoping to create something that would be bold, but also harmonious in its environment. And so I was happy that this piece sort of takes the element of the steel and the sort of the rigidity and the firmness of the steel, but then with these cutouts, it really creates, a sort of a more organic feeling. This is a different view. I was hoping almost that these curved lines and openings would mimic the meadow grasses and the trees. And so it hopefully achieved what I was hoping it would. This is another opportunity with this piece is light kind of filtering through the openings and creating almost an extension of the sculpture. It really happens a lot in the wintertime in the snow. I really am enjoying watching it change through the seasons, not only with the colors that are surrounding it, but just the way the light is different. And it's just, it keeps surprising me at different times of different seasons. So these are some ways in which the sculpture is almost becoming, you know, an extension of itself with the light. Here's another couple of shots of it. I really enjoy it in the snow, I think. I'm gonna have to go back there in the wintertime again. But it also, at night, it's illuminated so that there's a whole nother experience at that time as well. And one really fascinating thing that happened with this when I was at the fabricator with my clients, there were all these cutouts, and the cutouts of the sculpture are very big because this sculpture is 1 3/8 inch thick. And so it seemed just wrong to throw them away. And so I decided to create something with the cutouts. And so I actually created this pathway in the woods. It's in sort of a gentle sloping area in a woods near the other sculpture. And so it creates a very different experience, but again, and it's something that's going to evolve over time. We planted moss inside, in between the forms, and so it's going to sort of change over time. But I was really happy to create something that was somewhat sustainable in terms of using the scraps and kind of you know, repurposing something and creating something new with it. So in addition to this sculpture, I created a painting installation for this welcome structure that they have on the property. And so, can you hear me okay? I'm sorry, I think the heat, okay. My clients commissioned me to create a painting commission, working again with these maps and specifically elevation data of the Appalachians and specifically the Pennsylvania salient, which I was talking about before, this area of bends and folds. And so it was really, it was a lot of fun. It was a very organic process to kind of work on this painting. It's 5 by 10 feet. It's called Sanctuary, which is really what this space is to me. And it was, again, another way of sort of sharing the story of the Bower Sculpture Park. So that actually was just installed last Sunday. So this is all very new. And I'm looking forward to going back there when it's open. So I wanted to switch gears now and talk about my artist in residence at Integral Molecular. I was really honored to be selected to take part in this residency program. And Integral Molecular is a biotech company in Philadelphia as part of the UC Science Center. And they're doing just a myriad of innovative research and development in many areas, including antibody research for the COVID vaccine. And so it was just such a pleasure to work with all of these people. Again, just such a supportive and generous team of people wanting to help me and share information with me. And because of the pandemic, it was challenging. We were doing some of it, on site and some of it on Zoom. And, we all kind of rolled with it, and it worked out really well. I really became fascinated by something called reporter virus particles, which is a technology that they've developed where they're combining the spike protein of different variants of the SARS-CoV-2 virus. And instead of, they're taking the spike protein on the membrane, and then inside they are creating green fluorescent protein. And so essentially what they're doing is they are then exposing living cells to this reporter virus particle and basically simulating what it's like to infect a cell with the virus. But instead of the cell having the virus, the cell fluoresces green. And so it was really incredible to see under the microscope this happening, and to see the multitude of variations and to see the different variants as well. I am really interested in another aspect of this, which is looking at how cells communicate with one another, and how cells create these little micro communities. They actually, reach out to other cells, to neighboring cells with arms. It depends on the cell. They could be Filopodia or they could be dendrites, but they're reaching out to sort of to communicate and to create these little micro communities. And so I'm really fascinated by that that aspect on a micro scale and how that actually relates on a macro scale, and thinking about cell-to-cell transmission of the virus, and thinking about person-to-person transmission of the virus and the transmission within the community. And so again, it's like this micro macro thing that I'm really kind of drawn to. The image on the upper left is a little bit different, and it's basically, Integral is creating these reporter virus particles to then share with other people that are going to use them to work on antibody research. And so in another way, they're also trying to understand and create cells that have the receptors on the membrane that connect to the spike proteins. And so the upper left is sort of showing that, yes, these cells have the receptors because this antibody is touching only the outside of the cell. And the blue actually represents the nuclei of the cells. So anyway, there's so much incredible, inspiring imagery that I got to look at. And I created some paintings here as a start to sort of think about these ideas of community and these ideas of connectivity and networking and how these images, how these cells fluoresce. What I want to do moving forward is make larger paintings with some of these ideas, but also to think about the larger macro community transmission. And that is kind of going to be working with data sets of transmission rates in Philadelphia, in particular, thinking about how communities of color have been disproportionately affected. And so I'm actually going to be working with data sets to create large paintings. And in addition, I'm going to be hopefully working with sound. I'm actually going to use a program where I can sonify data, where actually I can listen to the data and actually create music. And I'm actually working with one of the scientists at Integral, who's also a musician. And I found that actually many of the scientists are musicians because many scientists are. So scientists and artists, again, are very much in sync. So, but one of the things I wanted to share is, in addition to the sound piece, I am going to be creating something similar to Shimmer, the piece that I showed you with the bioluminescent mimicking in the lights. This is actually a time lapse of living cells fluorescing by being infected by these reporter virus particles that I was just talking about. And this was shared with me by Tab Sullivan, who created this, 60-hour time lapse. Again, showing how they get brighter and brighter, and you can see all the movement because these are living cells. And so I'm going to actually recreate this animation, this video, and take the patterning of the lights and bring it into a sculptural installation with light. And in addition to this, we're hoping to create another time lapse. I'm going to just play it one more time. We're hoping to create another time lapse simulating how antibodies can then prevent the reporter virus particles from infecting cells. And that is really the important key to it, is that I want to sort of show the efficacy of vaccines and how through my art installation, you can see the before and the after. So this is to be continued. I'm going to be working on this for the next several months, and I'm going to be having an exhibition at the Esther Klein Gallery in August with this work. And I will keep you posted if you check my Instagram, I guess. I just wanted to share a couple of other quick projects. How am I doing for time, Angela?
You're good.
Okay.
You have about 10 minutes left.
Okay, I'm going to be real quick. This is actually a concept called the Immersion Project. And this is something I've been working with Eric Cortez, who I went to Costa Rica with, who's a coral ecologist at Temple University, and then another artist, Christine Lee. And this is a concept for an immersive, interactive art experience that would have a second life as a coral reef in the deep sea. It would be an artificial reef in the deep sea. And essentially, we'd be 3D printing forms that were inspired by corals. This is a little bit more literal in this rendering, but it would be loosely inspired by coral forms of deep sea corals that are actually found in the Gulf of Mexico in the deep sea. I'm not talking about shallow reefs, I'm talking about like 1,800 meters and deeper. And essentially, this is part of a larger restoration effort to restore damage that was caused by the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. You can see in the map on the right, the X where the spill took place and how it sort of permeated the area. There's a lot of deep water corals that haven't been able to rehabilitate. And so this would be an exhibition that would then, portions of it would be actually deployed and placed on the ocean floor to create reefs that would then help propagate new reefs to form and help to like kind of recuperate ecosystems that depend on these reefs for habitats. So this is an exciting project. We're trying to procure funding for it, and I'm hoping it'll work out. But I wanted to also just play something while we're talking about this. This is called Blue Dreams, and I'm working on a video right now. This is just a still, but it's a video projection project that's through this ocean memory project I've been talking about. It's a collaboration with marine scientists, and it's going to be an abstract and dynamic portrayal of our oceans, and it's micro worlds of these vast microbial networks that I've been talking about, to really express how they mediate complex processes in the deep sea and on our planet. They are, we're hoping through this, we're going to project it on a large scale in a public space, and so to sort of take the micro and make it macro, and to sort of to really kind of share the magnitude of microbial networks. And we may be incorporating LED lights on top of the projection, using audience interactive programming like swarm behaviors that would sort of call attention to swarming in the ocean as well. The sound piece you're listening to is just something I've been experimenting with. I'm gonna turn it down a little bit, but I've been thinking a lot about working with hydrophone recordings of ocean sounds, but decontextualized. And so this is actually a layering of many sounds from different parts of North America and Mesoamerica. But thinking about sort of an accumulation of sounds, and thinking about, again, this is part of the Ocean Memory Project. So something I'm playing with. And I just wanted to end with, I am going back out to sea with Mandy Joy, the scientist that I went to Guaymas Basin with. She got funding again from the National Science Foundation and has invited me out, and I'm humbled to be going back with her. We're going to be diving again in Alvin. This is an image that she took at a location that I haven't been to yet, but it's just got these incredible, what they call mirrored flanges, which are like these overhangs, and you can see all of this liquid, shimmering water and chemicals, and there's just incredible life to be seen there. And so the BBC is also going to be on board this expedition to film Blue Planet 3. So it should be exciting. And I'm just really grateful for these opportunities to work with scientists and to collaborate and to create like meaningful pieces that potentially, you know, resonate beyond the aesthetics and just bring, you know, joy to people that inhabit them. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. This was so beautiful, and you have such an exciting life. Thank you for sharing all of your work with us. We do have time for some questions if anyone has any or comments. We have one here in the chat from Sandra. She said, do the paintings incorporate silkscreen or such printing techniques?
It's a great question. I actually used to incorporate silk screening all the time in my work. I did a lot of collage and a lot of silk screen into my paintings, but it started to become unsatisfying to me. To silk screen, I wanted to actually paint everything by hand. And so I stopped silk screening in like 2004 or 5. So yeah.
Deborah is too overwhelmed to think of questions. So John, this is recorded, so we will have this presentation up on YouTube within a couple of weeks on the Science Center YouTube channel. And we will also be having an exhibition of all of Rebecca's work in September at the Esther Klein Gallery. So hopefully you can come see it in person.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. And thanks to all the scientists at Integral. One of them, Haley Crawford, I can see your face smiling here. Haley was just amazing in terms of getting me into the lab. She's the one that got me excited about reporter virus particles, you know. And so I'm really grateful for their enthusiasm. And, you know, it's just, I feel really enriched. I'm having these opportunities to work with scientists and to really expand what I'm doing creatively. So I feel really lucky to be doing what I'm doing, and humbled for the opportunities. So.
We had such a wonderful time with you there. I wish you could have stayed for longer. And
I know.
it just blows me away how productive you are, how creative you are, how productive you are, and how you go home with an idea. And, you know, next time I see you, you have 8 paintings. I have a quick question. Do you know what your focus is going to be when you go back down in Alvin?
That's a great question. I mean, I'm definitely really interested in, I definitely want to do more recording, sound recording. I don't know if I'll have the opportunity when I'm in Alvin, but I'm really interested again in bioluminescence. I want to explore that more, but we're going to be going not just to Guaymas Basin, but we're going to be going to Pescadero Basin and Sonora Basin, which are a little bit further south. And we're almost potentially going to even arrive at the East Pacific Rise, which is another part of the Pacific that's really, really fascinating geologically. So I'm not going to, you know, corner myself yet. I really want to be open to what's going to happen. I know that we're going to do some sort of exhibition at Georgia Museum of Art again, whether it's virtual or there's going to be some sort of tie-in with what I'm doing. And yeah, I'm really excited. There's going to be some science writers on board. And as I mentioned, the BBC, and they're going to be, you know, this area, that image that I showed you is just, it's like out of science fiction. I just can't even, you know, this is an actual photograph that Mandy took in Pescadero. So I don't know what I'm going to do with myself when I see this with my own eyes, you know, just, yeah, so.
Nancy has a question. Can you highlight how you began to contact scientists to be able to go out to sea?
You know, I'm trying to think. Actually, I can tell you it was by serendipity. You know, I think I was intimidated a little bit I did try to contact, as I mentioned, Woods Hole to get in Alvin back in 2005, and I was laughed at the time. And now, I mean, I don't know other artists that have been in Alvin. You know, I certainly, I don't know if I hold a record, but I've been in twice and I'm going a third time. So somehow it ended up working out. But I actually met Eric Cortez, the gentleman I mentioned, who's at Temple, through my child's preschool. And we were talking, and I said, you know, I've always dreamed of going in Alvin. And he kind of was like, haha, really? You know, like he didn't really believe me. And then I started showing him some of my work and talking to him about, you know, bathymetry and sort of multi-beam sonar data that I've been talking about, and showing him these paintings of the ocean floor. And that's when he was like, well, you need to go out to sea first and see what it's like. You can't just like get in Alvin, you know, it just doesn't work that way. There's like a hierarchy, you know. So anyway, he was the one that connected me with the Nautilus research vessel, Ocean Exploration Trust, who invited me in 2015 on that first trip. And you know, it was a commitment. It was a 3-week commitment. I wasn't sure if I should go. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't want to leave my kids. And my husband, who is always so supportive, was like, you don't know what's going to happen. This might change your life, you know? And so he was right, of course. He's always right. And so, you know, I went, and I didn't even need to go down to the bottom of the ocean. Just being out on the water and seeing what was happening was just an incredible opportunity. So, you know, since then, it's been sort of this like growing network. I'm being contacted by scientists that have met me through one of these projects. And so, you know, I'm trying to think. There are opportunities, though, if you're interested in, I don't know if you're personally interested in going out to sea, but there are, like the Fall Corps research vessel is, they take applicants to go out to sea. They take artists. It's called the Schmidt Ocean Institute. And so you can get onto their website, and so does Ocean Exploration Trust. They are interested in educators and artists and writers. So I think it's just an amazing opportunity. So, yeah.
Awesome. What an inspiring story. Well, thank you so much, Rebecca, for sharing all of this with us. And thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you all so much.